Have you ever wondered what the secret is to being a good assassin? What's stopping you from carrying games just like high elo assassin players do? Is it just their mechanics carrying, allowing them to outplay every fight? Or is there perhaps something else that they're doing which makes a good assassin seem like scoring kills is so simple? Not to worry, in this video we'll be breaking down every difference between a good and bad assassin player so you know what you need to start doing to carry more games. Starting with the most important and somehow simplest thing to fix in your gameplay, split pushing. It's very odd. From what we observe of low elo assassins, a lot of them just don't realize how potent split pushing actually is. And the big mistake they, and perhaps you, constantly make is spending way too much time grouped with their team in mid. Sure, sometimes it can be useful, but you should be spending way more time in a side lane than you realize. Think about it. What makes a split pusher like Fiora or Tryndamere annoying? Well, it's the fact that you can't catch them if you try to collapse to their lane and kill them. And if you leave them alone, they'll end up 1v1 or 1v2ing your team. So just think about it. What class of champions generally has really good mobility and insane dueling potential? Oh, that's right, assassins. So why is it that we rarely see lower elo assassin players playing primarily to split push? One of the best ways for you to single-handedly carry games is to dominate the side lane by yourself. By always pushing sides, you can reliably score picks by catching your opponents off guard when they go to catch the waves that you've pushed into them. But even if you're not going for a pick and your opponents know exactly where you are, it doesn't matter. If you're strong enough, you can usually outright dive anyone trying to defend you, allowing you to really blow the game wide open. But don't think you need to always be getting kills to be doing well. Even making your opponents waste just a little bit of their time can go a long way. Kassadin's side pressure baits Graves and Victor to chase him for a bit. Is this the greatest advantage ever? No, but League is a game about accruing a lot of small leads, and being in a side lane is one of the best way to get many benefits as an assassin. Speaking of simple mistakes that you can easily fix for better results, let's talk itemization. There's two big issues most bad assassin players make in regards to their builds. The first is over-prioritizing damage when they're already ahead. It goes without saying that if you can already deal enough damage to kill someone, that you don't really need any more damage. Take this Zed for example. He's got a massive lead in mid and just needs to snowball. Notice that he's against both a Katarina and a Mumu, two magic damage champions. In this base, he could go for Merc Treads to negate a Mumu's CC, or Hex Drinker to avoid lethal damage from a Wombo combo. He opts for neither. Yes, Lucidity Boots are usually correct on Zed, but when you're already this far ahead, you don't need them nearly as much. And unfortunately, Zed very shortly after messes up a single time, allowing himself to be CC'd and throws his lead in an easily avoidable way. As an assassin, you're pretty squishy, so we recommend that once you're far enough ahead to where damage isn't a concern anymore, that you instead opt into bruiser or even tank items. In this specific case, Talon went for an early Death's Dance and Merc Treads for his boots since he was already snowballing. Look how much of an easier time he has playing out this fight. He's able to be the one actually initiating the fight, and he's absorbing so much of the pressure in the skirmish from his opponents, making everything easy for his own team. Yes, he's not obliterating everything in one combo, but you don't need to if you're already strong enough. The versatility and safety of tankier items when you're ahead will help you snowball and make sure you throw your leads less often due to small mechanical mistakes. Now, although we don't see a lot of defensive itemization when ahead for assassins, unfortunately we see it all too often when they're behind. For example, this super weak Fizz has opted in Zhonya's. Yes, it's a good item on Fizz, but it's absolutely worthless if you don't deal enough damage. He cannot even threaten to kill the super squishy support Senna since he's dealing so little damage at the moment. Your main role as an assassin is to kill people. If you're behind, you can't afford to not deal damage. If you can't threaten someone 100-0, then you're effectively useless. Yes, it sucks when you're feeding and you want to feed a little less, but when you're behind, try to build the most damage you possibly can so you can at least kill one squishy target. It's better than living slightly longer but being useless anyway. And if you're serious about climbing as an assassin, but you don't have the gift of having Faker's mechanics, then we highly recommend this special course we've made that shows you how to truly smurf your way out of silver, gold, and platinum. Assassins can get away with so much more in these elo brackets if you know what to look for, which you're never going to see on high elo streams or pro play. Our smurf strategies teach you exactly how to play the game the right way in your actual elo bracket if you truly want to climb. Everything from the best ambush spots to team fighting, laning, and macro, we've got you covered. So check us out on Skillcapped right after this with our special link in the description below. Which brings us to our next major point, trading 1 for 1. When playing an assassin, you can't give up your own life for the enemy ADC and say worth every time. Sure, sometimes it is, but you should think about it a little bit more than that. For example, this Evelyn is doing fairly alright, but the Vladimir on the other hand has been pretty useless the whole game. But watch Evelyn's tunnel vision trying to kill him. She disregards that she's walking into an area where her opponents have just been and ends up trading her life to finish off the kill. Not only that, but it even baited her own teammates to their demise, throwing the game completely. Let's compare that bad play to a good assassin who actually has the discipline to not always go in. The same Talon we watched before is obviously doing very well for himself. In this coming fight, he finds a great opportunity to potentially go in and one-shot the enemy Ashe. However, doing so would leave him in the middle of a lot of enemy champions with high damage and CC, surely resulting in his death. So Talon just waits for a better opportunity. Once the fight becomes a little bit more chaotic, he finally commits to killing the enemy Ashe. And of course, since he's so fed, now the fight is exactly what every assassin dreams of, just a bunch of small skirmishes where he can dispose of his opponents one by one. And this was all possible just by having the discipline to know when his own life is worth way more than the life of one carry. And as a quick note, the reverse is obviously true. If you're having a horrible game like this other Talon is having, then trading your own life to give your team an opportunity is worth it. At this moment, Talon has to decide whether going in is a good idea. If he does, he's definitely dead, but because he's so weak, the benefits of doing damage and buying time for his team are certainly worth it. As a result, Vayne goes down and his allies win the encounter. Moving on, something else we rarely see low elo assassin players pull off is wasting their opponent's time. Remember, you're pretty mobile and you can dance around your opponents fairly easily. What this means is that a good tactic to pull off in solo queue is baiting your opponents into thinking they can kill you, but in reality, they'll never be able to catch you. But when we mention this, players usually think that you need to get big results for this to be worth it, like distracting 5 people while your team does Baron. While that may happen sometimes, this tactic is usually to gain small advantages. Just baiting your opponents for 10 to 15 seconds can often allow your team to maybe clear a control ward, or to take a raptor camp. Like we mentioned, small advantages can go a long way to winning you games. But yes, you can obviously make game-winning plays this way, like baiting your opponent into your own team for a skirmish. Take a look at this LeBlanc. It's clear as day that she's being collapsed on by multiple people, but instead of running away immediately, she opts to stay, knowing that with her mobility and flash available, there's no way that these champions can kill her. She dances around her opponents, wasting their time and cooldowns, all the while giving her own team an opportunity to set up a counter. Now that her opponents are overextended, her team can re-engage and take a free teamfight win. Speaking of group fights, this is a strategy that works remarkably well in the actual fights too. Assassins are high threat targets for the enemy team. You're usually the first one focused since you're so squishy and trying to dive into the enemy back line. However, this can actually be used to your advantage to really dominate an encounter. Take a look at this Fizz's ensuing fight. First, he picks off the Pyke who was out of position. Now he's deep in the jungle and goes on the Uction to try and make a way out. He doesn't score a kill, but he did buy himself the space needed to get out. It's clear as day that Fizz could easily get out of the situation with his E up, but take a look at how he's going to play. He's going to E back in, baiting the enemy team to try and kill him, all the while giving his own Sivir all the freedom in the world to auto-attack. As the fight progresses, Udyr gives up on the chase, and now Sivir is in danger. So Fizz takes it upon himself to bait Udyr yet again, giving Sivir a little more time to auto before she dies. At the end, notice how hard this Fizz carried the fight by constantly baiting his opponents to go on him, all the while knowing he could get out with his mobility. Now that's how a good assassin carries. But that's the ideal of playing an assassin. If we actually review lower elo players, it feels like they just have no clue what to do in teamfights in general. They go headfirst into an enemy team in full vision, have zero pressure, and just get focused down instantly. If you're having this issue, then it may be because you're engaging way too often from the front. This is likely a result of not knowing what the macro strategy for most assassins is. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the video, you want to be in a side lane way more often than not. But this isn't just to have split push pressure. The main goal of pushing side lanes is actually to be able to collapse favorably to team fights. Here's what it looks like. You push a side lane, so someone from the enemy team responds to your push and defends their tower. Then you collapse through the enemy jungle. This naturally allows you to find flanks on the enemy team, while potentially making the fight a 5v4 since you force someone to go defend the wave you pushed. That's obviously the perfect ideal situation though, and won't always happen, but even slight side lane pushes can go a long way. Even a mediocre push like this one from Fizz and then going through the fog of war will naturally let you engage a fight from a flanking position. The point here is that coming in from the back is way more easy to pull off than the front, and it's way easier to do this if you were in a side lane at the start of it all, rather than sitting with your team in mid. Speaking of making teamfights easier for yourself, you should always remember that you're not supposed to be the first one in. So many bad assassins tend to try and get fancy, and just end up walking into point and click CC their opponents still have available. It doesn't matter how good your mechanics are. If there is scary CC in the enemy team comp, then you just need to wait for them to use it before you go in. As you can see, this Talon is very hesitant to go in, knowing that Amumu is level 6 and has an ultimate you can't outplay. But finally, once Amumu commits his ult onto Galio, Talon is free to go in. There's no hard CC left for Talon to worry about, allowing him to fully commit to a kill and even make a great getaway. Speaking of watching out for cooldowns, you should definitely do the same with the items your opponents are building. All too often, we watch bad assassins fully commit their combos onto targets that have Zhonya's or Stopwatch, Exhaust, Guardian Angel, etc. Imagine if Talon hadn't committed his ultimate on Xerath. He'd be able to commit for a kill or two here, but instead, he just walks away unable to do anything. Now let's compare that to an assassin who knows what they're doing. As this Talon approaches the enemy team, look at him press tab. He's taking a stock of what defensive options his opponents have. It's clear that Ahri has Stopwatch, so although she's a squishy target, it's probably a mistake to go on her. So instead, Talon uses his ultimate and you can see him deliberately run past Ahri, knowing that hitting her is pointless. Instead, he commits to the enemy Ashe and scores a kill. Afterwards, he lands a W on both Vi and Ahri. Naturally, you'd look to combo Ahri here in most cases since she's much squishier, but again, he makes the conscious decision to hit Vi instead since Ahri would just stopwatch his Q. Thanks to his awareness, he can now clean up the fight and made this 1v4 look super simple just by pressing tab at the start of it all. Let's talk about some final tips. Most of you know that as an assassin, you should often look to buy Sweeper and even camp unsuspecting brushes so that you can get some easy picks off on your opponents. LeBlanc waits here patiently, knowing that misfortune may eventually show up, which allows her to score a very easy kill. However, you can take this a step further. You shouldn't just wait in any random brush and hope someone face checks you. You need to actually think about what your opponents are likely to do and camp brushes that they'll pass on their way there. For example, if Dragon is spawning soon, you may want to set up in any of these brushes about 30 to 40 seconds before Dragon spawns. Then, when they're on their way to contest vision, you can snatch an easy kill, which should secure the objective. Here's a great example of this actually being done. This LeBlanc match went to late game and became super tense. The next fight is likely to decide the outcome, but then LeBlanc spots the enemy red buff spawning soon. Almost everyone makes sure to take blue and red before late game fights since they're powerful buffs, so someone is very likely to come this way. LeBlanc noticed that Misfortune was in mid with the rest of her team, so she sweeps her way through the dragon pit towards this brush. This would be the way MF would potentially path to come take red. But LeBlanc notices that she's not actually coming to take the red, which is a bit weird, so perhaps it's going to someone else. Knowing that the enemy Yone still isn't shown on the map, LeBlanc deduces that he's likely the one to head over to red, so she shifts her positioning there instead. And right on schedule, Yone shows up and gets instantly deleted by LeBlanc. Thanks to this pick, LeBlanc sets up a 5v4 for her team and cleanly secures the win by then flanking the enemy team in mid. Now that's how you carry a game as an assassin. Hopefully from all these examples, it's clear as day that it's not just mechanics that carry high elo assassin players. It's just understanding your basic macro goals, simple awareness of your opponent's goals, and tools they may have to shut you down. Keep these concepts in mind and you'll be scoring more kills and carrying way more games. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching and catch you in the next one.